The royal family, life after death. It so happened that today, thanks to someone's favor, access to many archives has finally been opened. The truth, bit by bit, is starting to reach people, leaving no one indifferent who considers themselves Russian. We all know that, according to official history, Nikolai's family was executed by the Bolsheviks on the night of July 16th to 17th, 1918. Now we know more, and there are statistics showing that only people with a certain lineage can be in power, and they are not killed, but their deaths are staged. There is similar evidence about Hitler, by the way. And after the well-known substitution, Peter was kept in a French prison until his death. That's why there is information circulating on the internet about an alternative fate of the royal family after Emperor Nikolai was captured by special forces from England and the United States of America. February 23, 1917. And here's some more information to think about. November 7 is a Red Letter Day and the birthday of Trotsky Bronstein. June 12 is Russia Day and the birthday of Bush Sr. So what are we really celebrating? Nicholas's abdication. In reality, Emperor Nicholas did not abdicate the throne. This act is a forgery. It was drafted and typed on a typewriter by the Quartermaster General of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief's headquarters, Alexander Lukomsky, and the Foreign Ministry representative at the General Staff, Nikolai Basily. But it was not Emperor Nikolai Alexandrovich Romanov who signed this typed text on March 2, but the Minister of the Imperial Court, General Adjutant Baron Boris Frederiks. And although yes, the top ranks of the Russian army's generals mostly betrayed the Tsar, but the Middle Officer Corps and several high-ranking generals, such as Fedor Arturovich Keller, did not believe this forgery and decided to go to the Tsar's aid. It was from this moment that the split in the army began, which turned into a civil war. Just 4 days later, Nikolai was betrayed by the elite of the Russian Orthodox Church, misleading all of Russia. By seeing this fake act, the clergy passed it off as real and sent telegrams throughout the empire and beyond, claiming that the Tsar had supposedly abdicated the throne. Here we need to pay attention to whose side the Russian Orthodox Church ended up on, and whether it would act the same way in a similar situation today. Well, after the revolution, all the bishops and priests who betrayed the Tsar met death or were scattered around the world as a result of their grave crime against the Tsar. Staged events to falsify the execution. There is a lot of information about the emperor and his family's time in exile, about their stay in Tobolsk and Yekaterinburg, and much of it is supported by numerous testimonies. Thanks to Stalin and the intelligence officers of the General Staff, the royal family was taken to different Russian provinces with the blessing of Metropolitan Makary. As the White Army advanced in Yekaterinburg, Soviet institutions were evacuated, including documents, property, and valuables belonging to the Romanov family. On July 25, the city of Yekaterinburg was occupied by the White Czechs and Cossacks. The garrison commander, Major General Golitsyn, appointed a special commission consisting of officers, mostly cadets from the General Staff Academy, chaired by Colonel Sherikovsky, who was tasked with investigating the findings in the area of Ganina Yama. There, local peasants, while raking through a recent fire pit, found charred items from the royal wardrobe, including a cross with precious stones. And now imagine how the workers were burning valuables of unprecedented value and significance and smiling to themselves. I think they would have choked rather than burn such things. Just think how many cartridges and rifles could have been bought with the money earned from selling such a relic.
Technologies for protection against PSI and energy influences are over 30 years old. Engineers took 3 years to reduce the device's size, making them compact and efficient. Mobile Energy Protection Device BK-17. Details are below the video.
So, Captain Malinovsky, who received the order to inspect the Ganinoyama area on July 30th, took with him the Sheremetevsky investigator for major cases of the Yekaterinburg District Court, several officers, the heir's Dr. Derevenko, and the Tsar's servant Kemodurov, and went there. This is how the investigation into the disappearance of Tsar Nikolai, the Empress, the Tsarevich, and the Grand Duchesses began. Malinovsky's commission lasted for about a week, but it was this commission that determined the area for all subsequent investigative actions in Yekaterinburg and its surroundings. It found witnesses to the Red Army cordoning off the Koptyakovskaya road around Ganina Yama. It also found those who saw a suspicious convoy that traveled from Yekaterinburg into the cordoned area and back. Evidence was found of the Tsar's belongings being destroyed in bonfires near the mines. After all the officers went to Koptyaki together, Sherikovsky divided the team into two parts. Malinovsky examined the Ipatiev house while Lieutenant Sheremetevsky was inspecting Ganina Yama. During the inspection of the Ipatiev house, Malinovsky's group of officers managed to establish almost all the main facts within a week, which later became the basis for the investigation. A year after the investigations, in June 1919, Malinovsky told Sokolov, "As a result of my work on the case, I have come to believe that the imperial family is alive. All the facts I observed during the investigation point to a staged murder." At the scene on July 28th, Nametkin was invited to headquarters, and since the civil authorities had not yet been formed, he was asked by the military authorities to investigate the case of the royal family. After that, they began inspecting the Ipatiev house. Dr. Derevenko and the old man Kemodurov were invited to help identify the belongings. Professor of the General Staff Academy, Lieutenant General Medvedev, participated as an expert. Notes while inspecting the Ipatiev house. From August 2nd to 8th, I had access to publications of the decrees of the Ural Soviet and the Presidium in the Central Executive Committee, which reported on the execution of Nikolai. The inspection of the building, traces of gunshots and signs of spilled blood confirmed the well-known fact of the possible death of people in this house. As for the other results of the inspection of the Ipatiev house, they gave the impression of the sudden disappearance of its inhabitants. From August 5th to 8th, Nametkin continued the inspection of the Ipatiev house and described the condition of the rooms where Nikolai Alexandrovich, Alexandra Fyodorovna, the Tsarevich, and the Grand Duchesses were kept. And during the inspection, he found many small items that, according to the valet Kemodurov and the heirs Dr. Derevenko, belonged to members of the royal family. Being a very experienced investigator, Nametkin stated after inspecting the scene that a mock execution had taken place in the Ipatiev house and that not a single member of the royal family had been shot there. He officially repeated the information he had gathered in Omsk, where he gave an interview on this topic to foreign, mainly American correspondents, stating that he had evidence that the royal family had not been killed. On the night of July 16th to 17th, he was planning to make these documents public soon. An unexpected turn in the course of the investigation. On August 7th, 1918, a meeting of the departments of the Yekaterinburg District Court was held, where, unexpectedly for prosecutor Kutuzov and contrary to agreements with the court chairman Glasan, the court by majority vote decided to assign the case of the murder of the former Emperor Nicholas to a member of the court, Ivan Alexandrovich Sergeyev. After the case was transferred, the house where he rented a room was burned down, which led to the destruction of the entire Nametkin archive. And just 6 days later, on August 13th, Nametkin handed over the case to Sergeyev on 26 numbered sheets. And after the Bolsheviks took Yekaterinburg, Nametkin was executed by firing squad. Sergeyev realized the full complexity of the upcoming investigation and understood that the main thing now was to find the bodies of those who had been executed. In forensic science, as many people know, there is a clear principle: no body, no murder. He placed great hopes specifically on the expedition to Ganina Yama, where the investigation searched the area very thoroughly, even pumping water out of the mines. But unfortunately, they only found a severed finger and an upper jaw prosthesis. It's true, a corpse was also recovered, but unfortunately it was the corpse of Grand Duchess Anastasia's little dog. Oddly, some witnesses even claimed to have spotted the ex-empress and her children in Perm. Dr. Derevenko, who treated the heir just like Botkin, who accompanied the royal family in Tobolsk and Yekaterinburg, repeatedly testified that the bodies brought to him were unidentified. These were neither the Tsar nor the heir. Because the Tsar should have had a mark on his skull from the blow of a Japanese saber in 1891. Thus, the investigation comes to a dead end, never managing to prove the execution of the royal family, the life of the royal family after death. In the KGB of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, a special department was organized within the Second Main Directorate to monitor all movements of the royal family and their descendants throughout the territory of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Regardless of personal opinions, this must be considered, and consequently Russia's history will need to be re-evaluated in the near future. The daughters, Tatiana and Olga, the latter lived under the name Natalia, resided in the Diveyevo monastery, disguised as nuns, and sang in the choir of the Trinity Church. Tatiana moved from there to the Krasnodar region, where she got married and lived in the Apsheronsky and Mostovsky districts. She was buried in 1992 in the village of Solyonoye, Mostovsky district. Her daughter Olga went to Afghanistan through Uzbekistan with the Emir of Bukhara, Said Alim Khan, and lived there until 1944. From there she went to Finland to see Viryubova S. Since 1956, she lived in Viritsa under the name Natalia Mikhailovna Evstigneyeva, where she died in 1976. In our time, in 2012, her remains were exhumed from the cemetery grave and reburied near the Kazan church. The daughters of Nikolai, Maria and Anastasia, the latter lived as Alexandra Nikolaevna Tugarieva, spent some time in the Glinskaya hermitage. Then Anastasia moved to the Stalingrad region and got married in the Tugariev hamlet of the Novoaninsky district. She later moved to Panfilova station, where she was ultimately buried. In 1980, her husband Vasily Peregudov died defending Stalingrad in January of 1943. Maria moved to the Nizhny Novgorod region, to the village of Orefino in the Aksky district, where she was buried in 1954. Tsaritsa Alexandra Fyodorovna stayed at the Tsar's dacha until 1927. This is the Vedensky hermitage of the Seraphim Ponyataevsky monastery in the Nizhny Novgorod region. And at the same time she visited Kyiv, Moscow, St. Petersburg and Sukhumi. The Tsaritsa took the name Ksenia. She did handicrafts, made blouses and scarves, and for making hats, straw was sent to her from Japan. All of this was done not just for fun, but by order of local fashionistas. In 1942, Starobelsk was occupied. The Empress was invited that same day to breakfast with Colonel General Kleist, who suggested that she move to Berlin. The Tsarina responded with dignity. "I am Russian and I want to die in my homeland." Then she was offered to choose any house in the city she wished. They said it wasn't proper for such a person to live in a cramped dugout, but the Tsarina refused this as well. Empress Alexandra Fyodorovna, under the name Ksenia, lived in the city of Starobelsk, Luhansk region from 1927 until her death in 1948. She took monastic vows as Alexandra at the Starobelsk Holy Trinity Monastery. Tsarevich Alexei became Alexei Nikolaevich Kosygin, twice Hero of Socialist Labor, holder of the Grand Cross, Order of the Sun. In 1935, he graduated from the Leningrad Textile Institute, and in 1938 he became the head of the department of the Leningrad Regional Party Committee, chairman of the Executive Committee of the Len Soviet. In 1941, he became the deputy chairman of the Council for the Evacuation of Industry to the eastern regions of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics from January to July 1942. He became the State Defense Committee's authorized representative in besieged Leningrad, participating in the evacuation of the population, industrial enterprises, and Tsarskoye Selo property. As a child, the Tsarevich sailed on Lake Ladoga on the yacht Standard and knew the area around the lake very well, so he organized the Road of Life across the lake. To supply the city, Alexei Nikolaevich created an electronic center in the city of Zelenograd. But the fifth column in the Politburo did not let him bring this idea to life. Stalin affectionately called his nephew Alexei Kosiga. At times he would refer to him as Tsarevich in front of others. Already in the 60s, Tsarevich Alexei, understanding the inefficiency of the existing system, proposed moving from socioeconomics to a real one. To keep track of the products sold, not just produced, as the main indicator of enterprise efficiency and so on. Alexei Romanov normalized relations between the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics and China during the conflict on Damansky Island, meeting with the Premier of the State Council of the People's Republic of China, Zhou Enlai, at the airport in Beijing. Unfortunately, the death of Tsarevich Alexei coincided with Brezhnev's birthday on December 18, 1980, and during those days, the country never learned that Kosygin had died. The ashes of the Tsarevich have rested in the Kremlin wall since 1980 and remain there to this day. The head of the biology department at the Ural Medical Academy, Oleg Makeyev, said that genetic analysis after 90 years is not only difficult due to changes that have occurred in the bone tissue, but also cannot provide an absolute result even if it is carried out thoroughly. The method used in the studies conducted so far is still not recognized as evidence by any court in the world. After the organism dies, DNA begins to break down quickly, getting cut into pieces, and the longer this process goes on, the shorter these pieces become. After 80 years without creating special conditions, DNA fragments longer than 200 to 300 nucleotides do not survive, but in 1994 during analysis, they supposedly isolated a fragment of 1,223,000 nucleotides. Thus, Peter Koltypin-Volovskoy emphasized that geneticists have once again refuted the results of the examination conducted in 1994 in the British laboratory, based on which the conclusion was made about the Ekaterinburg remains belonging to Tsar Nikolai and his family. Emperor Nikolai II was buried in Nizhny Novgorod at the Krasnaya Etna Cemetery. In 1958, the emperor was given a funeral service and buried by the famous elder and priest from Nizhny Novgorod, Grigory Dolbunov. So, what are we seeing once again? History is a collection of political fabrications made to please the next winner. In order for us to interpret reality correctly and as a result choose the right path of development, we need to seek the truth, not just what is considered true, but to reconstruct the actual events of the past based on facts. Did the royal family really not get executed? And who was the true mastermind behind this fabrication? We will soon find out. Subtitles created by